First off, what can we expect from the Bulls this season?
Well, I will say this, it's a new coaching staff, it's new coordinators, it's new blood. And, I mean, they've had their top three receivers injured. Dontavian Bogut, their number one receiver, injured his ankle in the first series against Florida. That was a huge, huge loss for the Bulls. Sterling Griffin and A.J. Love is their second and third receivers. They've both been out with injuries all year long. And maybe it was a blessing in disguise that these receivers were out, because they have turned themselves into a power football team. And they lined up against Florida, and they ran the ball right down their throat. I thought that was extremely impressive.
All right, Justin, how well will this year's USF defense match up against the Orange?
Well, I'll start at the corner position. One guy who was a walk-on, I believe now is a scholarship player, is Mistral Raymond. He steps in. He's one of your starting corners, and they really consider him the shutdown corner this year, and he has just been phenomenal. At the safety position, Mark Joyce, who they got from the state of Florida, hard-hitting safety, contributes a lot on special teams. Long-term guy that's going to become the next Nate Allen. Mark Joyce is a special player. At defensive line, they don't have the elite pass rushers they've had in years past, but they've got so much depth that they can continue to move guys in and out, which really helps with the heat down here as well, getting a good rotation along the defensive line and always having fresh bodies in there. That's definitely a positive for USF on defense.
And finally, what's your prediction for Saturday's showdown in South Florida?
It's tough because, I go back to, where both of these teams are at this point. USF has struggled throwing the ball. I think both teams are going to want to run the ball. I think it's going to be probably lower scoring than what we're used to seeing. If I'm looking at a final score, maybe 24-14 or 24-10 USF. It's also homecoming for USF. They're going to have a huge crowd. It's going to be very loud. So I think the home field advantage plays into it, but I think Syracuse is a lot better. They're continuing to get better, and with Doug Marrone as a head coach, it should be a lot of fun to watch for the Orange up there.
All right, thanks, Justin Pawlowski of WDAE Radio in Tampa. Now let's bring back in our analysts, David Suntup and Bettina Shore. Now, Justin talked about this a little bit, but how do you see Syracuse exploiting the USF defense?
Well, Clay, I think the only way to exploit this defense is to mix it up on offense. Syracuse is going to need their rushing game and their receiving game. Van Chu is probably going to get open because the focus will be on DeLon Carter, especially in the beginning of the game. So if Syracuse is able to mix it up, throw the defense off their heels a little bit, we'll see what happens.
Well, Bettina, in order for Syracuse to have a chance against this USF defense, it really comes down to moving the ball to the outside. The Bulls' defensive line is very talented. They're going to get into the backfield quickly, so you want to move DeLon Carter out to the outside. That's something that Doug Marrone talked about in his Colgate press conference after that win. So if they can move the ball to the outside, release the ball quickly, that's how Syracuse will get by against a very, very dangerous USF defense.
All right.